Hope is here. The way to break free with your host, Angela Pedigo, will light a flame within you. Host Angela Pedigo is an author, speaker, and certified life recovery, grief, and joy restoration coach. Angela uses her own life experiences to help you navigate and guide you to success. She also has developed tools that incorporate her faith and her drive to overcome any obstacle in life. So please welcome the host of The Way to Break Free, Angela Pedigo.
Welcome, everybody, to The Way to Break Free. I'm your host, Angie Pedigo, and today I'm super excited. I know you guys hear me say that every week, but I am super excited because I have some really good guests on here, but not much. Very special guest, special to me, is Colby Lane. He's a brother to me, not blood kin, but he is. And I just can't wait for him to share everything about him, his life today. Colby, there's so much I could say about you, and I don't even know where to start. Colby has been in recovery. He has literally been the face of recovery, transformed our whole county, and we're going to get into a lot of that today. Just super excited for you to hear his journey, because if there's one thing that I know that this is going to do today is inspire hope. And it doesn't really matter what it is that you're hopeful for, but whether it's, do I enter recovery or do I not? Whether it's I'm struggling with this dream or this passion or desire that I have, something I want to see through, like a goal. So no matter where you're at in your life today, you're not going to want to miss this, because from point A to point B today, has it been a journey? So welcome, Colby, to the show. I'm so glad you're here. Tell them what you do today.
So today,
then we'll back up.
As of a month and a week ago, I am a county employee for the Macon County Sheriff's Office.
That's awesome.
I think my title is Reentry Coordinator.
That's cool. That's cool. Before that, Colby came from the State Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, and he has been, I think you were over 13 counties at that time, right?
I was, yeah.
So now he's getting to just really focus, real intently in his own county, which is a beautiful thing. He's really put in the work for all the different areas. So take us back, Colby. Let's talk about how did addiction find you?
Well, for me, it was getting into a relationship too early, probably not being mentally or emotionally mature enough to be in a serious relationship. And when it fell apart, and I went back to my friends that I was isolating from, they were drinking, smoking, laughing, and laughing was very appealing to me because I was not in a good place. And so that's what started it. It didn't take hold right away, but it did do something to my brain, because going forward, anytime I faced adversity or any type of feelings I didn't want to feel, it was like, oh, well, you can go do this so you don't have to feel it. So it became a coping mechanism for me.
Yeah, like a reward center kind of thing for the brain. I think it happens with a lot of people that way, whether it's the what is different for everybody, how you got in it. Nobody wakes up and says, oh, hey, my life's aspiration is to be an addict. Right. But we just stumble across it sometimes. You hit on that relationship thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, they always talk about, what's the gateway drug to addiction? And I've heard you say many times, it's that relationship. And I believe that. Tell us a little bit.
Miss Barbara, my first boss in the mental health field, she made a statement one day about, I think the gateway is your first adolescent relationship. And I had to really look into that because it really did start there for me. Angie and I haven't talked about this recently, but here recently, I'm thinking like the inability to recognize and process grief is the gateway.
Oh, yes. Tell us about that.
Well, so I lost my dad at a young age, and probably in the last year and a half, someone reached out to try to get in touch with my girlfriend. She's a nurse, and so she had gone through a traumatic event, and I was trying to emphasize with her, but I just couldn't make the connection. And I was like, what's going on? Like, why can I not find empathy for this individual? And so I called my supervisor at the state, and he's like talking to me about the loss of my dad. And probably I put some walls up that were really, really high, you know.
Mhm.
And so I've always had a disconnect when it comes to loss. I just assumed at a young age that's just part of it.
Mhm.
And so I stumbled across a little quote, and what I got out of it was that grief is just love that you leave on the table.
Ooh.
And so that's kind of how I've been approaching it ever since. And I'm like, well, I can see that now in different places of my life and other people's lives that I work with. Like, you had love to give and it had nowhere to go once
Ah.
the situation was over.
So is that where you feel like you put like those walls up?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
is that
sure.
just a protection for those kind of things?
I'm sure. Absolutely. I was talking to Hunter. Angie knows Hunter. That's my girlfriend. I was talking to Hunter recently, and you know, 30 something years ago he passed away, but like to this day, the what ifs, like, you know,
Yeah.
Shiloh will graduate, you know, is Shiloh like him? Is this XYZ, you know?
Yeah. How old were you when he
2
passed
months
away?
from my 4th birthday.
Wow. So you didn't get to
Mm-mm.
like know any little thing about
Mm-mm.
him.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the significance of that. Like, again, when I started working in the mental health field, I got introduced to the ACEs survey. You know about the ACEs
Yes,
survey,
yes.
adverse childhood experiences, 0 to 18, a little scale of potential events that could create opportunities for long-term substance use issues, mental health issues, or physical health issues. And parent suicide is one of those. And so, like, when I got introduced to that, it was finally like a light bulb went off, and I got the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, parents got divorced, moved back and forth from here to there. Never really felt like there was full trust in my home. Not to say that anybody was in the wrong. It was just it's how it was.
Yeah.
And those are all things that factor into the potential for those health issues. And so uh, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm always trying to figure out like what's at the root of all this stuff. And
Oh yeah.
so for me, that really helped me out. And so now when I'm working with other individuals, that's one of the first things I give them because it was just so profound for me in my journey.
Yes. A lot of people, I think grief and sometimes addiction do go hand in hand just from coaching people. Sometimes people are in addiction, the root or the hang up is grief.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people may not identify with addiction, but they're identifying with grief. But you know what I find works best for grief is a 12-step program.
Right.
Like absolutely heals those things because behind griefs, it is a lot of well, there's anger, there's resentments, there maybe, you know, sometimes people are resentment toward the individual. Sometimes it's, especially if it's like in a relationship or like a marriage or something where I know when my dad passed away, of course, I was 35 and I was resentful but for a long time because he chose not to get the early on care days, that could have maybe prolonged his life a little longer. And that was his choice to make, but I was still angry about it.
Right.
And so I shut
Yeah.
those walls down and didn't grieve that time. It actually took me 8 years to finally grieve that. And I wouldn't even talk about it. Like it was just work yourself into an oblivion. Not so that's where my
Right.
workaholism like was
Right.
flaring up because that's
Yeah.
how I dealt with it. So yeah, I get that a lot, but it also amazes me how well a 12-step program works for those struggling with grief.
Absolutely.
So they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
That's really cool. We hadn't got to share that lately, so
and you know, I probably heard you plant those seeds and probably talk about grief because it's a word you hear throughout your life. But to actually sit down and try to see what it is, I mean, it really touches almost all areas of your life at some point or has the potential to.
Yes. Well, and then you go through those cycles, there's the bargaining and depression and anger and denial, I'm not calling them in the order, but I know like for some people that I coach, I won't say it happens that way with everybody. Some people hit this phase and that phase is over and they hit this phase and that phase is over. But what I find is that most people will sit in those first 4 and they just recycle them until they hit acceptance. And it's when the acceptance finally comes is when the closure comes. So it takes a while.
Yeah.
It takes a while to do that. And that's okay. If you're out there grieving today, that's okay. It takes a minute. So, but it is harder to work through grief if you don't have something or someone or a program of some kind to walk you through that, because we don't know what to do with that.
Right.
Did you know what to do with
Absolutely
that?
not. Still figuring it out.
Yeah, especially since it's kind of coming to the surface now.
Yeah.
It amazes me, there's no restriction on time as to when that can surface. And what you're talking about is a prime example of that. Yeah. So let's just take that example.
Okay.
How did that play? Let's fast forward to, you were talking about the relationship and, being young for one thing, you're not ready to handle a relationship necessarily at a young age, early teens, we think we got it all figured out kind of thing. But what do you think about the walls, like those walls that you have up from grief, like all that love and nowhere for it to go? Did that make like a shutdown of a relationship harder to deal with?
I'm sure. I haven't even dove into that yet. Like, you're sitting here talking and my mind's like, I was like playing with action figures till I was like a freshman in high school, like girls were cool, but more or less like it was more pressure from my friends. Like, why don't you want to go do this or that? And I'm like, I don't really care. I care about sports and action figures. But, I just think like maybe it caused me to have heightened emotions because that thing was always like, I guess, kind of put away somewhere. And so whenever you have the chance to, I guess, let it out, like maybe it's more intense than if I would have processed it. I don't know. I'm just talking off the cuff right now because I haven't had time to think about it.
Yeah, that's there may be some kind of connection there. Who knows? So how old were you when, starting to hang out with those friends and they're saying, you're seeing them laugh and you're thinking this is a way to cope? And
I am 14 or 15.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I think I remember probably tasting alcohol at some point throughout my childhood, but actually consciously partaking in it for a specific reason, 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon. That I think parents are shocked a lot of times at how young their kids are. Of course, generally a lot of times that's not shared with parents. They don't know. They might think, oh, 18, 19, 20, when it's actually like 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds.
Right.
So yeah, it's never too early to start talking about that kind of stuff. So so where did it progress from there?
So I'm going to say this and then I'll answer that. Like, I was raised in a particular way, taught about God, took to church, you make good grades, you clean up after, all the things. I had a good family. So like I was very conscious of those type of things because in the way I was brought up was those are the things that are bad for you. My father struggled and had stuff in his toxicology report, and so genetically predisposed. But again, no one in my immediate family did that. My stepfather, he drank after work, but in my mind, this guy gets up every day, he goes to work, and he doesn't miss work, and he's very successful. So as long as you keep it under control, it's an okay thing. When it progressed for me was, I'd say 3 to 6 months later, and I can't remember what the stressor was, but it was I don't know if it was a friendship, relationship. I don't know if it was school, like, grades type of thing, or could have even been I'm at that age where I'm a little mouthy, towards my mom from time to time. And so I think in those moments, that's when I would go to that. And then it turned into like a weekend thing. And then it turned into, by the time I'm a senior in high school, like it's an every day after school thing. And I'm losing opportunities for my future because I'm making this a priority and not other things.
Yeah. That's a really good point you're driving there. Well, I'm going to pause you right there. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to pick back up on this topic as soon as we return.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back from the break. We are here today visiting with Colby Lane, and he is taking us through his journey, which is, it's really covering a lot of different areas, from grief and childhood experiences, and now we are leading up into the where addiction found him, and those early relationships and missed opportunities, and that's kind of where we left off at the break. Colby, let's go back to that, the missed opportunities that we were talking about. How do you feel like that affected you?
Well, as you guys can see, maybe that I'm a 6-foot white guy. I don't know if you can tell that by me sitting down, but I played football, basketball, I ran track in school, and my sophomore year, I made the decision that I was just going to play basketball and run track. And it wasn't because I excelled at basketball versus football. It was because I was insecure of my inability to take in the hand signals from the sideline. And instead of, pushing through it, I had already started this behavior of running from things and avoiding things. And so I said, I'm done with football. And I stuck to basketball. And with basketball, like I said, I'm a 6-foot white guy. I don't know how many of those there are in the NBA, but I can't count on any of my hands right now. So with that said, I became the captain of my team because I worked hard at it, played since I was 5. But at some point, my coach quit playing me for political reasons. And so then again, instead of dealing with the adversity and gaining the traits that you get from dealing with adversity, I said, "Oh, I'm done," and I quit. From there, I get in trouble. I'm in a car with some friends, and we get pulled over for speeding. There's alcohol in the car. We all get charged with minor in possession of alcohol. Significance of it not only is my first run-in with the law, but I had been on an official visit to Arizona State to see about running at their school, whether it be walking on, partial scholarship, whatever. And I got suspended after the minor in possession. And so I missed out on that opportunity because one of the meets that I got suspended from, they were going to come watch me. And so, again, not knowing how to handle the grief, the loss, the whatever, I just buried it with, drugs and alcohol. At that time, just a little bit of marijuana here and there.
Yeah. So now you kind of lived in 2 different places at that time too. So
yeah.
How, this is just coming to me, but how do you feel like all of that, was that impacting or affecting your identity at that point?
Yeah. So I will say that I think where I'm at today is beneficial to live on two totally opposite ends of the spectrum. Being in Macon County, rural Tennessee versus the suburbs of Dallas. But then for me, it was like I could never appease the group of people that I felt connected to. I was either not enough over here or too much over here. And instead of understanding who I was, I would just try to mold to, fit in. And not that I really ever had a problem fitting in. I didn't even look at it that way at the time. But as I look back now, I can see how it affected my life, moving forward. I became a people pleaser.
Yeah.
So to avoid conflict.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Did people pleasing fan the flames to
I would say
looking
so.
for methods to cope?
I would say so. I don't know if people saw me as insecure, but like I was never comfortable in my own skin. So, drink a little bit and all that's out the window.
Yeah. Feel like Superman.
Yeah. I feel like I'm more personable. I feel like, people like me more. And, I'm not as in my head of thinking about all the things like you laugh too loud, you laugh too much, you talk too much, you do this too much. It's just like I'm just chill. And even when I kind of started introducing marijuana more into my life, that was because the effects of alcohol kind of made me a little much sometimes. And so the weed relaxed me. And so again, solely just for the connection purposes.
Looking for
acceptance
somewhere. Yeah. And knowing there's something missing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people, whether they resort to addiction or not, but there's a lot of people that are looking for acceptance somewhere.
Yeah.
And it generally goes back to something they lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in addiction days, like, let's paint the picture of how it's our choices that get us there, but like, there were times you wanted out of it. Like,
absolutely.
What was the hardest part for you, like, or the heightened moment?
Yeah. So, given how much time we have, I've done it all. And it was a progression thing. It wasn't like I started off with hard stuff. I got to hard stuff because it became the most economical thing for me. Once you're not employable, you've burned every bridge under the sun. Like it was hard for me to come up with the resources to acquire what I wanted. And so like the hard stuff was what I did because it lasted the longest, but like the roughest times of addiction were when I was in the middle of the 8 years of opioid use. The motivating factor after the initial, whatever wore off was I don't want to be sick. Don't want to be sick. And for anybody out there listening, it's like the flu on steroids. So aches, sweats, all the stuff. I don't need to go into detail, but there was that. And then when I got to methamphetamines, it was like, I think that was the loneliest place I ever was because there got to a point where I couldn't tell the difference in what was true and what wasn't true. And so like no trust, no honesty, like anybody that works 12-step programs knows the foundation is honesty. The next thing is trust, and you get to acceptance. So like there was no honesty in my life. And so everything was just, for me, I got to like paranoid psychosis. And so that loneliness was just misery for me. And so I tell people or have told people that I would much rather come off of opiates cold turkey than to deal with the mental withdrawals that came with methamphetamines. I mean, it took me 90 days before I could like see people talking and not thinking they were talking about me or plotting on me or whatever. And just the two different, lows really. One is I don't like the person I am because I have to lie, steal, manipulate not only myself but the people I love daily just to get this thing to not feel sick, only to keep making myself sick. Uh, don't even know who you are anymore, to like the psychosis of the methamphetamines and literally thinking every single person that you come across has an ulterior motive that and you can't trust them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, just constantly seeking some type of connection or relief. And maybe it works initially, but it don't last very long.
Yeah. What would you say was the beginnings of your turning point?
Well, when I started getting in trouble, judicial intervention really was helping me get on the right path, because I would have to sober up when I went to jail. There was nothing in there. So I've been to jail 7 times. Every time I went, from the beginning to the end, it was longer. I was in there. The things I got in trouble for were harsher, had harsher consequences. And so my daughter was a big motivation. Like when I would go to jail and she'd come visit me on a box and want to know why I couldn't come home. And so I was exhausted by the time I got to the end. So it was always trying to get there, just not having the support or the resources, or really even knowing where to go to get out of it.
Yeah. Trying to figure your own way out, and
you're in like a big dark warehouse and you're trying to find the door, but you can never even find the wall to scale it to find the door.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I want to say this out there for parents who might be listening, or family members, spouses, whoever. If you're dealing with someone who is in addiction in your family, it's not just as simple as make the right choice, make the right decision, change what you're doing. You would have as much luck walking into someone who's struggling with dementia or something and trying to convince them of the same thing, because the brain has gone through so much at that point that you just can't process. Like, you can't find your own way out at that point. And parents or loved ones who have the clear thinking, if they don't know what to do either to help you, how would you know what to do to help you with an unclear thinking? So resources and exposure and raising awareness is so important, because whether you're clean or whether you're sober, and you're clean, you're trying to help somebody become clean or sober, everybody needs to know. Like, it is such a problem in our nation that you cannot share enough resources. You cannot talk about it enough, and just spreading the word, getting the word out. So really, really think about that. Go to like wherever your county is, or local resources. Call till you find what you need. Like, get on the internet, look it up, and just keep looking. So yeah, let's pick up from there.
Okay.
So you talked about jail.
Yeah.
I know you and I have talked before about a turning point that you had in jail. I would love for you to share that with them.
So I get to jail November 30th of 2017, totally exhausted. And I don't know how soon it was that I guess they call it the prayer of desperation, but it's more or less like, God, I'm tired of all this. Like, if this is what my life is going to be like, I'd rather not be here. So just, help me. And so that help, what that looked like was start seeing people, I guess, becoming aware of things more. So like the guy across from me, he's saying his blessing over his food. And I'm like, oh yeah, we did that growing up. I need to start doing that. Or like they're having prayer calls every night before bed. So I go down there and do their little prayer call. Some are doing Bible study. And so I started noticing things. I do 3 months in our county jail, and I have to go to Carthage, Smith County, because I'm on my second violation and they have warrants for me. And so this guy gave me a Bible, little standard King James, no study notes, no middle section for references, just a plain Jane, black and white with the red letters. And something just kept telling me, like, when you get to Carthage, it's going to be quiet. You need to read this Bible. And so,
that's good.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna pause right there for a minute and let's take a break because I don't want to interrupt you when you get in this. This story is really good. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back from the break. Before we took the break, Colby was taking us through his journey about his last time to jail. So somebody had given you a Bible, no notes, no anything.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So, right before I leave Macon County, they calling people to court, and there was a little guy in my pod with me, and his name was Alex, but when they called him by his full government name, his name was Emmanuel, and I never thought anything about it before I left. But when I got to Carthage that same day, that night, I opened my Bible, and for some reason I started in the New Testament, and Matthew's the first book, New Testament, first chapter, you get to the bottom, and it says, and they'll call him Emmanuel, God is with us, or close enough, and I thought, wow, maybe God's been up there with me in Macon County this whole time. And so I didn't know anything about reading the Bible. And for what it looked like for me was I had a little flexible state pen. And I would say, God, just show me whatever I'm supposed to see. Thank you. Every time I read. And so I had dots on some little verses. I had underlined. I had a cross if I thought it was real important. I got out the next day to go to court, and they said, you can take recovery court or flatten your time. And I said, how long until I get out if I take recovery court? And they said, oh, just 2 weeks. And I said, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so I went back to the back, and I just kept reading, and I got to Luke, and Luke 1:37 was, for with God nothing shall be impossible. And I remember when I read it, I'm like, I know John 3:16. I know Philippians 4:13. Where was this verse at growing up? And it might not even mattered really, but in that moment it mattered. And I thought, as long as I got God in my life, I can overcome anything. And so I continued to read, and I read the Bible cover to cover in 3 weeks. And the only way I can explain it was the feeling I got off of it was similar to the euphoria of drugs. And from there, I started reading other books, and I ended up getting moved to an open pod, and I go to before the recovery court team. This is April 26th, 2018, and they say, Mr. Lane, there's 2 people in front of you to get beds for treatment, and so when they get their beds, like, you'll be able to get out and enter recovery court. Probably be 4 or 5 weeks. And I'm like, okay. Well, I was reading a book, A Man After God's Own Heart, about David, and I was talking about all the other guys in the Bible that God showed favor to, and they were all making covenants with God. And so I just thought, like, I'm going to make a covenant with God after everybody goes to bed. And so I asked God for certain things and said, I'm not trying to tempt you, because I had just read about that. And so the last thing I said, I was like, I like to get out of jail in a week, Hail Mary. And the next day, they brought me to the front with some other guys. They drug tested us, because it turned out that 16 out of the 20 trustees had brought drugs in and failed drug tests. And so they gave me a job. And the importance of that was I probably had 7 months left on my time. And so my time was going to get split in half to about 3.5 months. And I thought, man, do I really need to be in recovery court anymore? I can do 3.5 more months. And I thought, man, this is a test. Like, every time I get out, I get high in a parking lot. Like, I need structure and accountability. So I made a decision, like, I'm going to do it. But a week to the day that I made that prayer, they called me over the intercom, and I had to go to the little box in our pod, and it was the recovery court team. And they said, you're not getting out today, but you are getting out on Monday, because one of those people in front of you failed a drug test. The other one has holds in another county. And so, for me, my prayer didn't get answered in me walking out of the jail that day, but it got answered in that amount of time, and it just did something to me. And so from there, I went to treatment, and I was in a good headspace from reading the Bible and already working on that relationship with God, that all the things that could have distracted me or frustrated me there, like, didn't weigh me down. I learned about the importance of being able to share in a group and get stuff out. I learned about the importance of really just going to meetings and the significance of that. And from there, I went to recovery court.
Yeah. So statistically, in the recovery court, how many people generally?
I don't know, girl. I know in treatment, there was like 25 or 30 of us in the room, and they're like, 4 or 5% of you will never have to come back, but the rest of you will be back. And I'm like, looking around, I'm like, it's like 1 or 2 of us. Mm-hmm. And so I remember making the statement to the person next to me, like, I'm not coming back. I don't know who else isn't, but
you made a decision. You were going to be one of those people, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So from there, so you went through drug court, graduated through all of that, and then that kind of jump started, next steps of you, like, working in recovery. Yeah. What did that look like? Take us through that journey.
Well, I was a month out from graduating recovery court, scared to death that once I graduated and I wasn't getting drug tested, that I would relapse. And so a job opened up at Smith County's Drug Prevention Coalition. And, part of my thought process was, everybody will think I'm a cop if I go to a drug prevention coalition. And the other part was, who cares what people think? Like, if you don't, like, you're setting yourself up for failure. So I took the job. And it didn't start off like 40 hours a week. It started off 2 days a week. I got to do some stuff at the spot in Carthage. And that's how it's really been for me the whole way. It's like, I get a little bit, and then God sees, like, how I handle a little bit. And when I get to the place where I'm handling a little bit the way I'm supposed to, like, I get some more. And so that led to the overdose prevention job through the Department of Mental Health, Substance Abuse Services. And again, that wasn't full time. Suzanne and I split a 20-hour position covering 13 counties. A new grant opportunity opened up while I was doing that to cover 5 counties doing recovery work. And so that was, Macon, where I'm from, Trousdale, where I've ran around, Smith, where I was found my recovery, and Jackson and Clay, which were neighboring counties. And I just thought it was, divinely orchestrated. So I did that, but I'm an extremist. I'm a recovering drug addict. So still have those people-pleasing character defects. And, I'm working 250, 260 hours a month. And, you know, my little girls learn how to tie her shoes on YouTube and write in cursive on YouTube. And my mom's husband's teaching her how to ride her bike. And I'm like, I didn't get sober for that. And so at that same time, Angie and myself and some other ladies, we ended up in this little place in Kentucky. And
That was a powerful day.
mm-hmm.
Very powerful day.
Yeah, we had a spiritual experience, and it just changed the direction of my life. Not that I was going in the wrong direction, just took it to a different place. But I took 8 months off from work after that, doing the same thing I was doing, because I was also having these thoughts of like, recovery was freely given to me. Am I taking advantage of this free gift by making money working in this field? And so I battled with that internally, and I'm like, I'll just quit working. And at the same time, like, I was really seeking out Jesus. And so that was part of it, that process too, you know, like started reading a whole lot after that. And doing the same exact same things I was, helping get our coalition off the ground up here, sitting on the board at Waymakers and helping do stuff at Waymakers, our local coaching counseling place. More than that, but anyways, and just being more community oriented. And you know, after 8 months, the phone rang, and it was my old boss at the state, and he wanted me to come back to work. And I'm like, you know, if what I've been doing is wrong or taking advantage of that free gift, like, why would they call? Like, I didn't call nobody. My phone rang. And something that stuck out to me in meetings early on was always talking about God's will. How do you know what God's will for your life is? And so one of the guys I looked up to that had some time under his belt, he's like, I know it's God's will for my life when it comes and finds me, and I don't have to go find it. Mm-hmm. And so I approached it that way. And I really still had an uneasiness as to the clarity of why. Mm-hmm. But ultimately it was, you know, my mindset was, there's got to be something I'm supposed to be learning in this process. And doing that allowed me to take some trainings to get some evidence-based programming under my belt and be able to facilitate it, which gave me an in at the jail, which ever since I went to Macon County Jail, like, I don't know, I just have always been drawn back to it, just because like there's so many talented, smart people in there that are just literally they're in jail, but like mentally and spiritually they're in a prison. Yes. And so that was my in. And you know, through all that, we made relationships with the sheriff and the judge and staff, and they took a chance on writing a grant to bring in reentry services, and the grant got awarded. And you know, I get to sit in the office in the front of the building in the sheriff's department, weird, in the same facility I was incarcerated in. And like, if that's not God, like, I don't know what is. I tell those guys in the back, I'm like, look, growth is uncomfortable. If you're truly working a program of recovery, like, there's going to be discomfort involved, because you're shedding away stuff that you've put on throughout your life as armor, coping mechanisms, whatever you want to call it, just protective layers from being hurt in some way. And so I said, if I got to sit up there and be uncomfortable, because it is, and all the people are so nice. They treat me like I'm never done a drug in my life. That's an ego thing on me that I view a certain way. But anyways, I'll sit up there and be uncomfortable if one person, you know, says like, I can do something different in my life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's what I do. Yeah.
It is so beautiful. And I know what you're saying. That jail is full of talent, full of people who love God, people who didn't want to be where they are. They just didn't know how to process things they've been through in their life and cope no different than you and I did, you know, anybody else. And so, I love them so much. Yeah. I know you do. And you're making such a difference in I got to thinking about that this morning. I was thinking how, with all the counties that you've served and all the different positions that you've just talked about, and in the different capacities, different levels,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it is countless the number of lives that you have impacted. And we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about that vision. We're going to talk about having vision. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. We are wrapping up today with Colby Lane, and he has shared just some amazing things about his journey from addiction to recovery through grief, all kinds of things, spiritual enlightenments, all the things that he's experienced to get him to where he's at today too. Colby, let's talk about. I know when you and I first were, not only first met, but like within the first 6 months to a year of serving alongside of one another, I will never forget the day that you stood at the center and you said to me, Macon County is going to be known to have transformed recovery in this county, or however it was that you said
holistic recovery.
Holistic recovery. That was it. And then a couple years later, like, we put a vision board to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk about that a little bit. Like, what all have you seen transform? Where has the county been? Where is it at now? What all have you witnessed through that?
I totally forgot about that list. But one day, my coworker, when I was still at the office at the coalition, her little boy shut the door, and it was on the back of the door. And I'm like, oh man, we're doing those things. And so I moved it with me to my office now, and it's on the back of my door. But when I started my recovery journey, post incarceration and treatment, I had to have a meeting sheet signed, 3 meetings a week. Well, we only had Alcoholics Anonymous up here that met 3 times a week. So since then, I don't even know how many different types of organizations we have. Narcotics Anonymous, Crystal Meth Anonymous, Celebrate Recovery, 12 Steps of Armor. We have an addiction deliverance outreach meeting. Am I missing any?
There's meetings. You were talking about one meeting 3 times a week, and now there's multiple a day.
Yeah.
7 days a week, multiple a day. Recovery homes have come into town.
Yeah.
Mental health organizations have come into town. you've got to witness this, and this has just been in a matter of 4 years.
Yeah.
4
I
years.
remember coming to that house to do the Narcan training with y'all. Y'all weren't even in the office yet. Y'all were in the living room. And that's been cool. I've got to see a lot of the stuff happen. We called it Making Meth County when I was running around. And so we had an idea, myself and a group of others, like to come up with like a recovery oriented slogan, and it was making recovery possible, and kind of change the outlook on things. And so that turned into a recovery fest. We're coming up on our 5th annual recovery fest. Waymakers is a staple in our community. And they're coming up on their 4th Bloom Bash, 5th?
Yes,
4th. Yeah. The Emmanuel House, which is a women's transitional program in Smith County, has now opened a facility in Macon. We've already had a couple graduates, and watching women get their lives transformed, get their kids back, become not just parents, but present parents. And the cool thing about recovery is it's like whenever we shut off our ability to learn the things we probably were supposed to learn, in those early years, teens plus before that, you can see the hunger for knowledge and learning, and we're not afraid to ask the hard questions, and we're not afraid to look silly if that's what it takes to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I see in like so many people, that because of others speaking out about their recovery gives them some type of freedom to talk about their things. And it's not even always drugs and alcohol. It's all sorts of different things that you see, in your line of work. And, my favorite thing is to watch the light come back on in people, like, go from that hopeless state of mind, not knowing how they're going to stay sober today, to having a career, having a house, having a vehicle. And even though those things are cool, what they're most happy about is they got joy, they got peace, they got happiness. And I know in my life, like I thought things would fill the void, but it's really not things. I also do an addicted brain with the guys in the jail, and scientifically, spiritual experiences, God encounters, love, whatever, highest percent of dopamine spike on the brain. I like to reference Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is that substance of things hoped for. And I'm like, I put a lot of substances in my body, but what did I hope for throughout my life? And like when I looked at that, I'm like, I want to be kind. I want to be joyful. I want to have peace and self-control. And I'm like, man, that's the fruits of the Spirit. Like I've wanted relationship with God the whole time. And to be able to like tie that in and show like not only just spiritual principle of it, lived experience of it, but scientific facts to back it. I share that with everybody.
Yes, that's good stuff. There's been so much change, and you're right. When they say there ain't no high like a God high, that's the truth.
Absolutely.
It's been beautiful to watch the whole thing. I am so glad you're in my life. I'm glad to know you. I'm glad to call you family, to me at this point, to me and my family. And I don't, to see what's happened in our county, I just want to say, if you have hopes and dreams out there, put them on a vision board, watch them. Like, don't just think it's just a good idea that might not ever happen. But if God's calling you to something, He's put passion in your heart for it, follow it, chase it, because it can make astronomical differences. So Colby, we got 1 minute left. What would you leave listeners with today?
I say this to the kids in school. You could be the best athlete in the world. You could be the most successful businessman, or you could be the smartest person in the room. But if you don't know how to communicate and you don't know how to handle stress, you're going to crumble at some point. And so no matter what age you are, these are things that you have to deal with, and emotions too. And so I would encourage anyone that struggles in those basic areas, like start diving into that, because they're not going away.
Yeah.
And usually that's a kind of the catalyst of what gets you to those negative consequences from unhealthy decisions. So don't be scared to ask for help. Listen to your parents. Light bulb went off in my life, at about 2 years sober, like, oh man, my mom knew what she was talking about. And everybody needs help. We don't get through this life alone. So find a support system, trust God, clean house, and help others.
You have been watching The Way to Break Free on Bold Brave TV. Thank you guys for joining us, and we hope to see you next week.
This has been The Way to Break Free with your host, Angela Pedigo. The one thing Angela attributes her personal victories to is her relationship with God and her deep faith. Tune in each week and hear stories and testimonies of people in personal and professional trenches and how they overcome them with their own faith in God. The Way to Break Free has something for everyone, everywhere. Right here, Wednesdays, noon Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.